Hi, I'm Paul the Physical Therapist, and welcome to my vlog. In this episode, I'm going to talk with you about my top 5+ bodyweight calisthenic exercises that I've been using over the past year to help me to reach my fitness goals. These exercises have helped me to get stronger, they've improved my endurance, they've helped my balance, and they've also helped my flexibility. While I do have a ways to go to reach my fitness goals, I feel like these exercises are helping me to get there and will continue to do so as time goes on. Now, these 5 exercises are just a sample of a variety of different bodyweight calisthenics that I will use. With my exercise program, I also do use an elliptical trainer for steady state conditioning, as well as some for high intensity interval training and high intensity exercise. In summary, the 5 exercises that I favor are a bear walk, a Superman exercise, squats, planks, and push-ups. Stick around to the end of this video and I'm going to show you a bonus 6 exercise that I've been adding into my routine of late. Okay, so the first exercise in this series is a bear walk. To do the bear walk, start standing, bend forward all the way, bring your hands forward a bit such that you can get your palms flat on the floor. Try to keep the knees relatively straight. Some folks will need to start off with a bit of a bend in the knees because they may have some tightness in the hamstrings and calf there. And quite simply, one arm, opposite foot. Walking forward, one arm, opposite foot. One arm, opposite foot. I do like to do the bear walk both forward and backwards. And so going backwards would be 1 foot, opposite arm, 1 foot, opposite arm, and whatnot. The things that I do like about this exercise, they get me to bear a good amount of weight through my arms, which oftentimes ends up being, for me, the limiting factor with this exercise. My arms fatigue when I reach a point. And, well, then I know I'm done with the exercise for the day, with that particular exercise for the day. One other thing I really like to emphasize is when going backwards, I like to make sure my feet are pointing straight ahead. I like to get my heel flat on the floor. I like to straighten out my knee all the way. That gives me a really good stretch in the back of my calf. And that's another factor that, well, really makes me like this exercise. I've noticed over the past year that I've become capable of traveling greater distances with the bear walk. And that's another nice thing about this exercise, is that it's fairly easy to track your progress. How many times back and forth across the room can you go? How many times up and down the hallway can you go? That sort of thing. Now, for some folks, this may be a bit too difficult, and an easier version of the bear walk will have you go onto the balls of your feet with your knees bent a bit. This tends to be easier because it's a little bit easier to keep more weight going through your legs as you're doing the exercise this way. And quite simply, it's a nice variation. Okay. So the next exercise in this series is commonly referred to as a Superman exercise. I've got a towel roll over here because I like to use that into my forehead so that when my head is down towards the floor, when I'm on my stomach, my neck can stay straight, and it also gives me a little space for my nose. And the Superman exercise, I like to start thumbs pointed straight up in the air, arms reached out, legs fairly close together. And the way I like to do the Superman exercise, I like to start by first just lifting my arms up off the floor, using the backs of my shoulders and my shoulder blades. I really try to concentrate on pulling my shoulder blades down and back together. Then I like to lift my thighs up off the floor and keep my feet fairly close together as I do so. And from there, lift my head and chest up. Hold that for several seconds. Back on down. Let everything relax. And repeat. Now, why do I like doing this essentially in 3 steps? Well, if you don't, you can simply come up this way here, and you may be not really moving much actively through your shoulders or your hips with the exercise. It may just end up being that you're lifting up your trunk and arching your back in. And I like to have some motion separate from the trunk happening in my shoulders and my hips when I do this exercise. Now, this is an exercise that can be fairly challenging for any number of reasons, and what I'm going to do with most of these exercises that I'm going over today in the future is I'm going to make a series of videos that I'll call Building Up To, where if you can't do the Superman exercise, here are some basic things that you can do to build up to it. One thing I meant to say at the beginning, which is simply this: what works for me may or may not work for you. You should consult with your physical therapist to find an exercise program that's right for you. All right, so the third exercise on this list is a squat. To do a squat, I like to have my feet just wider than shoulder width apart. I like to keep my feet pointing relatively straight ahead. And I like to go through a full range of motion where I let my knees bend fully, let my butt come as low down to the floor as I can, even let my back round a little bit. I like to, as I'm coming up, keep my pelvis in a little bit of a posterior pelvic tilt. I'll have a separate video on doing a pelvic tilt for those who are new to the concept. And the reason I like to come up with a posterior pelvic tilt is that it gets me using my glutes more to drive myself up, and I find it takes a little bit of stress off of my knees. The conventional wisdom used to be that squatting was something that was bad for your knees, and honestly, I don't believe that's true. I do think that an inability to go through a full squat can be a sign of knee trouble, or hip trouble, or foot and ankle trouble, or back trouble, or what have you. And I do believe that regaining that normal movement pattern can be quite helpful. If you were to watch a toddler as they learn to walk, what you'll notice is that if they go to pick something up, they will squat straight down and come back up because they haven't yet developed the balance to bend forward and reach for something. One thing I'll point out as we're handy from the side here. When I get down to the bottom of the squat, I like to let my back round. When I come up, again, I like to keep my pelvis tilted posteriorly. When I get all the way to the top, I'll release that pelvic tilt. And sometimes I'll even reach my arms back, straighten my elbows out, lift my chest and look back slightly before coming back down again. And that's the squat. So the fourth exercise on my list is a plank, and there are some particular points that I like to focus on when doing the plank. First off, I like to make sure that the pinky side, or in fancy speak, the ulnar aspect of my wrist is pressed into the floor. And the reason that I like doing that is that when I get up into the plank position, when I press in this way, that also leads me to protract or round my shoulders a bit, which gets me using my shoulder blade muscles a bit more as part of the exercise, as opposed to just sort of hanging out sort of passively this way. The other thing that I like to make sure happens when I'm doing a plank is that I like to make sure that I'm in what would be called a posterior pelvic tilt. That's where the pelvis rolls back and the back is flattened. That's this position here, as opposed to an anterior pelvic tilt or an increased lordosis there. Reason being, doing a posterior pelvic tilt with the plank exercise gets you using your abdominal muscles a whole lot more. Another thing I like to make sure is that my hips and pelvis are fairly close to the floor, my knees stay straight, and just stay there for a while. When I started this exercise program, I started with doing planks from the knees, and after I got to a point where I was able to hold this for a good long time, I advanced to doing them up on my feet. Now, a front plank like I just did, I'm going to call exercise 4A, because there's another version of the plank that I regularly incorporate into my exercise program, and that's a side plank. Now, I typically start the side plank from my knees, and the same point about pushing that pinky side or ulnar aspect of my wrist into the floor still applies. I like to make sure when I'm doing a side plank that I lengthen out through my shoulder and that I don't stay sort of balled up here with my neck close to my shoulder. I like to increase that distance from here, shoulders, hips, and knees pretty much in a line, trunk perpendicular to the floor, and lift the hips up as high as I can and hold them there. I even aim to get a little bit of an arch this way in my side when I am doing the side plank. Now, when I do the side plank after doing the front plank, I like to use my dominant arm, my left arm first, and then switch over to my non-dominant side. And same thing here. Shoulders, hips, and knees pretty much in a line. Ulnar, pinky side of the wrist in the floor, pushing through the shoulder, head up, body perpendicular to the floor and ceiling, lifting the hips up really as high as I can, and maintaining that for a good long time. Well, On the geological time scale, it's going to be a very short amount of time. But for me, it feels like I'm holding this a long time. Now, one thing I am progressing towards doing, and as I get stronger, I will transition more completely, is doing the side plank with the legs straight out, lifting the hips up, feet stay flat on the floor. This version is a good bit more challenging, as you can probably tell from the change in the sound of my voice. And another thing to consider is that as you're doing these exercises, as I'm doing these exercises, what I like to do from day to day is to vary the order that I do them in. And yes, because if you're always getting to the same exercise at the end of the program and you're already fatigued from the previous exercises, well, you simply won't do as well. The body responds well to changes in our exercise routine. Not to say that doing the same routine over and over again is bad, because really the most important thing when it comes to exercise is consistency. So if you're a creature of habit and you like to have a list 1 through 5 or 8 or 10 or however many that you do, that's fine. But if you can do 1 through 5 one day, 5 through 1 the next day, 1, 3, 5, 2, 4, and vary up the number, the order that you do your exercises in, you'll get more out of the program that way. Now, next exercise on this list, and probably another good example of, boy, this exercise being done last, my arms are already a bit tired. Because most of these body weight exercises are push type of exercises, bearing weight through the bear walk, bearing weight through the planks, that sort of thing, is a push-up. Now, when I started this program, I started with push-ups from my knees, and what I like to make sure happens when I do a push-up is I like to start with my elbows close into my sides. That tends to be less stressful on my shoulders. As I push up, I like to point my elbows towards the middle, and when I get all the way to the top, I like to give a little extra plus and round my shoulders. Again, I like to keep a little bit of a pelvic tilt, and simply go from there. Now, when I do full push-ups, everything's basically the same, except I'm up on the balls of my feet and pushing through this way again and back on down. I like to do these movements slowly and through a full range of motion. I find them to be most effective that way. So there you have my top 5 bodyweight calisthenic exercises. But wait, there's more. One exercise, one ability that I'm looking to gain is the ability to fully balance my body weight on my hands. It is quite a challenging feat. Even in my younger and fitter days, I never quite fully got there. What I'm doing these days to work towards that goal is, well, I'll start off on all fours. I'll bring one foot up onto the ball of my foot, getting my elbow inside of my knee. Same thing with the other leg. And from here, I will tip my body forward, getting the weight off of my feet, putting them onto my hands, going up onto the points of my toes. And then I'll try to pick my feet up briefly. And the goal is, of course, to get to where I can stay balanced in that position. Now, one thing we'll sometimes also do is just stay in this position and not lift my feet up off the floor, because I can hold that a little bit longer and go from there. So a goal of mine, somewhere down the road, is going to be being able to balance in that position for a longer length of time. So there you have it, my top 5+ body weight exercises for getting myself stronger and improving my endurance and my flexibility and whatnot. I'm Paul, the physical therapist. If aches and pains stop you from doing the types of exercises that you'd like to be able to do, I can help to get you moving better and feeling better. My office is located in Summerfield, North Carolina, just outside of Greensboro. I'm available for in-person consultation, and I'm also available through telehealth throughout North Carolina and in select other states. If you'd like to reach me, I can be reached through my website, cedarhillpt.com. And if you have any questions about the content of this video, please feel free to ask them in the comments. I'm more than happy to answer your questions for you. And again, I'm looking forward to making some more of these videos, showing you ways that I would have somebody that I am working with build up to doing some of these exercises, showing you other exercises that I use personally in my routine, and well, a whole host of other things, really. Again, I'm Paul, the physical therapist. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.